Stand tall, walk free. Now we're discussing some more information on the forged checks. Can you tell me a little bit when you found those checks in the trunk when your husband was alive or not alive?
Yes, my husband was alive. They had stolen, Keikos had stolen the car. He and Paul Block were partners, and they were partners in crime because it turned out they both had gone to some banks, one in Santa Barbara. They had cashed some checks, and Keikos was arrested. Paul Block didn't get arrested. I don't know why. But they did fraud, bank fraud.
So they forged some checks, right?
Yes.
And it was, who's the one that forged the checks? Was it who?
Both of them.
But which one was the one the checks were made out to?
I can't remember.
Well, I believe you were saying that
I did find
Paul Block cashed it.
Yes. And there were some checkbooks too in the car from Bank of America, and it had an alias name, Jeffrey Morris, I believe was
Well,
the
that's
name.
what you were telling me, that Paul Block uses alias names too, right?
Yes.
And he doesn't really use his name, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's what you were talking about. So tell the audience about Keiko's wife. What bank did she work for?
It wasn't his wife, it was his sister-in-law, his brother's wife. She worked for Bank of America.
And what's his brother's name? Larry Keikos?
Larry Keikos was the son.
Whose wife was that?
George Keikos was the brother.
But whose wife was the lady that worked in the bank?
It was George Keikos' wife.
Okay, so let's get back to that, okay? She worked in Bank of America, all right? And those checks were under somebody else's name, right?
Yes.
And so you're saying that Paul Block uses alias names, right?
Yes.
And so does Keikos.
Yes.
So that would prove that there's a history on that. Now, I asked you before, where did the wife come from? What state?
I think it was New York.
New York City?
Yes. I think that's where they were. They were on the East Coast before they came out here. So they were in New York. He and his wife and children.
New York City, okay. So that proves the point, okay, that there was bank fraud through Bank of America. And you know, let me explain something to you so we can get into the story more deeper. That a bank teller has access to people's accounts, right?
Yes.
And so if she might have done this, she might have got into somebody else's bank account that had a lot of money, because there's a lot of seniors that are, you know, unable to handle their affairs. And so she might have known somebody with money, and so transferred the money to an account, and therefore those checks came in on an alias name to get the money out. So there was probably transfers. And what was the lady's name that was the banker?
Helen Keikos.
Well, that proves right there. And so those checks in the car, and whose car was that?
It was my husband's car. They had stolen it, and he retrieved. He told me to go through the trunk and see what I could find, what Keikos had left in the car. Evidence that he had gotten arrested.
And you wanted to say something that you forgot to say. Can you tell the audience what you wanted me to know that you forgot to say to me?
No.
Earlier, you were talking about something.
Oh, the executor to Marion Neal. She had 2 sons, and Stonehouse was the attorney, was their attorney. Evelyn Dempsey's attorney. Her 2 sons, one was a banker, Bank of America, and her other son was a Hells Angel.
So James Stonehouse was also manipulating some other people's accounts.
Yes.
And Marion Neal was, she had an estate, right?
Yes.
And what happened to the estate?
It got drained.
And your husband was part of it too, right?
Yes.
And James Stonehouse took that estate, right?
Yes, he got most of the money.
And what else were you going to say?
The Lippert Foundation. Didn't Stonehouse, didn't he take some of the money from the Lippert Foundation? That's what I think I remember studying.
Oh, the Lippert Foundation is where there was a producer in Alameda, and he was, where was that place that he was, his address for the Lippert Foundation?
It was over by where the yacht club is.
Okay. Yes, he was one of the members of the Lippert Foundation, and they were organizing. See, it's also a scandal of money that they were going through James Stonehouse. That's why he said he goes to the Columbus Club in Oakland and he gets together with the boys.
Yes.
So we're letting the audience know that this is a scandal and this is an abuse and it must be stopped. So we're going to continue this later. Thank you. Stand tall, walk free.